How about that for a little intro? That's not
I
too
know. I was
shabby.
watching like this.
That is cool. Well, everyone, welcome to the Analytics Say, our brand new show here in the kingdom of the Knights of DJ. I'm Jack Settleman, and joining me today is Cynthia Frelund. Cynthia, how are we?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I am doing excellent. We're headed into the holiday season, into the new year, into 2022. So great opportunity to kick off the show. But for our new time listeners, which is everyone who may not happen to know about our great abilities, will you explain to the people who you are, what you do, what you're so amazing at?
Well, I mean, listen, I don't know about amazing, but I do a lot of analytics for primarily NFL, probably most known for that. I work for the NFL Network, but I do it for other sports as well. I have a background in writing code, so I've created kind of my own proprietary models, and what makes them different are two things. The first is I use computer vision, so I can measure things and go back and kind of retroactively measure things. As long as we have video for it, we can figure it out. And two, because of I worked at my resume, I worked at the NFL about starting in 2008. I was able to actually ask coaches, people who were involved in running these plays, calling these plays, drafting these players, etc. So I kind of had this like perspective of being able to both, like look at it from an outsider, but then like cheat and basically say like, oh, well, this is what they were supposed to be doing. The safety messed it up, or this was a blitz, but whatever. We called cover zero, but that's not what the safety did, etc. So I get a little bit of a cheat code, and then I program that all in, and then do it kind of traditional, like everything from Monte Carlo methods to a lot of different ways. I just look at it because I'm a huge dork when it comes to that, and I simulate a lot of different ways.
Well, you're in the right place because we are here to be the experts and to troll back a little bit, because I think we both are on the forefront of content and our own takes and our own, things we like to discuss. But we always hear back from the trolls. And quite frankly, I'm just going to say it how it is. They just don't know as much as we do. So we are tasked with educating them. I'll say that nicely.
Listen, I actually think it's like a fun one in that, look, like I get a chance to, and you get a chance to like be paid to go deep and have these like sophisticated outlooks about analytics. And, a lot of people, they have other jobs. So this is their hobby. And so I've always thought of it as this like cool situation where like nobody deserves to have to, like, I'm still paying off my student loans. I don't know about you, but I got these master's degrees. They don't pay for themselves. So ultimately, like no one deserves to have to go back to school, but they should get the education, and it should be entertaining and fun. Right. So I actually kind of think it's fun when people who don't maybe have as much time or effort or energy to be able to go into analytics or as an experience with it, and it's becoming like this big thing in every single broadcast. You hear the analytics say to go for it on fourth down or whatever, so we're just here to be like, this is the truth. Maybe the analytics don't say that, the broadcaster just said that. So it's fun.
Absolutely. There is an appetite for content just like this. And that's why we created the show. It's not to be like Kendrick Perkins on ESPN, who, he played in the NBA, but there's a lot of stuff that comes out of his mouth that, he's a basketball player. He's not diving into the numbers behind it all. So we're really excited to educate the Knights Kingdom and anyone else who kind of latches onto the show. With that being said, you had the opportunity to be our first ever scout with Jigaman for the FCF Combine. How are the fellas looking out there?
I mean, it was awesome. First of all, for anyone who's not familiar with fan control football, one of the cooler parts is like special teams is like not a thing, right? So instead of an extra point, you do a one-on-one drill. So we got to see live. There were at this particular combine, it was out here in Los Angeles last weekend. There were a lot of these awesome skill players. So not to be whatever, but like, I'm not going to lie, I love a good lineman. That's like where I got my start really measuring people, but it is way more fun to watch the receivers and defensive backs and going on these one-on-one drills that were like just ridiculous. There was a tight end there. He had formerly played at USC. He literally, and our guy can vouch for this, looks like a knight. He belongs on our team. I mean, he just like absolutely like crushed everyone. So you got a chance to see some of these skills. They did like a bunch of drills, everything from the 40 to, which are, more traditional, like combine metrics and ways to derive metrics from that, to things that are pretty specific for fan control football. So, like approximating like the special teams play after. Super fun to watch. And I mean, listen, I know I said on our video that number 11's our guy. And I agree. Number 11 was like the best wide receiver out there. He was not the fastest one, but he was actually probably the one with the best instincts. So you want 11, but if we can't get 11, whoever 7 was, and they're going to print us out all like a list of everyone's names, but 7, that's your slot guy who's down and dirty in the slot, twitchy, quick, wasn't the fastest one, but he was super quick. 7's the dude. 7.
Okay.
So
7-11. 7-11.
We can remember it. Easy.
7-11. Not too
super
hard.
Fun.
Okay.
Yeah, there was like a sassy defensive back who had gone to Michigan State. He graduated in 2020. I liked him too. I'm from Okemos, Michigan, so I'm a little partial to the Michigan State Spartans, but he did a really nice job of actually defending a lot of these bigger guys. And I just love the pace of FCF. So you got to have these guys who are just gym rats. And this guy was literally going to another workout after. So it was really interesting. And I got a chance to talk to coach and talked about this air raid offense and kind of the principles that drive what makes fan control football like fun and successful. And he was telling me that obviously, and if you watch the film from last year, which I watched a bunch of it, it's, all of the, like, it started off with like these deep plays, these deep passes that were the key to success, but it's actually, you need a quarterback that can also scramble as well. So we need a scrambly quarterback and these deep plays and slot. We want 7. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that is very comprehensive for people who haven't even probably seen, who haven't even seen an FCF game before. I am so excited. Obviously, I was an owner of, the champions last year, but that was last year.
Last year. Where are you at now?
Now I'm on the right side. Now I'm on the right side with the Knights. And I think what's going to be really fun that I think you can speak to as well is we can evaluate these players. But also, when you're building out a team, I mean, culture, you look at some of the best teams in the NFL, year in, year out, they're great because of the culture and the type of people they're bringing into the locker room, not just their abilities on the field. What do you think the Knights' culture needs to be, headed into the season?
Well, I think we have a huge advantage as Knights because what we have is the ability to, when you look to see what was successful last year, you can speak to this. It were the teams that all of the people calling the plays, all of our Knights in our case, were on the same page in terms of strategy, right? So the different plays that were called, if they weren't aligned, it's the alignment and it's the getting on the same page when it comes to here's what our strategy is to take down this opponent. That's where I think we have like a lot of expertise because we've got a lot of great people and every night I've met everyone who's involved in this, like all super smart. We're really smart. Like I was really impressed with, I mean, listen, we talk about this, like the Gen Pop that sometimes tweets at us. I think that if you were to look at this subset of just Knights in those tweets to me, to you, these are people who they're really knowledgeable. They know exactly kind of what they're looking for and they're really adaptable, meaning I think we're not going to get stuck in that spot where here's our strategy coming into it, but we can adapt and adaptability. Right. That's something you see from NFL teams as well. The teams who are able to adjust at halftime, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the teams that win. And I think that's what we have here. Yeah.
I want to give a little piece of advice. Last year, we identified Travis Toivonen. He's done some time with the Giants and the Seahawks this year. Week 1, first play of the game, he got deep. He went deep, threw the ball to him, and he dropped a touchdown. The Wild Aces fans turned on Travis and gave up on him after one play, even though we evaluated through the combine, through the draft, our first-round pick. Week 2, he had 150 yards. Week 3, I think he caught a Hail Mary touchdown for the win. So let's be ready to adapt. Let's trust our valuations, prior to the players being on the field. But the one good thing is there is no punting. So there will be the analytics say when it comes to going for it. But we are going to review some of what the analytics said maybe last week. Let's do it. So let's start with my Ravens because John Harbaugh is the most analytically driven coach in the league. I don't know how many people know, but Daniel Stern is a friend of a friend. He's the one that became super popular during the Ravens 14-2 season for essentially telling John, hey, we should be going for it in these situations. We need to be more aggressive. The Ravens made a call earlier this year against the Chiefs. Most teams, they punt the ball back. There's 2 minutes left on the clock. They're on their own 40. The Chiefs would have needed 4 yards to win the game. They went for it. So for that, Harbaugh has been tasked with being the analytics coach. But last week, after losing by 2 points to the Browns, 1 point to the Steelers after going for 2 on the road, he goes for 2 again for the win. Cynthia, what did the analytics say here?
So what it really said was, remember, all analytics are context in the situation. It doesn't actually, the joke here is like the analytics don't say anything. They just tell you which is the higher or lower probability outcome. So you have to remember, how many players are either on IR or injured or some version of just not right with the Ravens? There's that guy, Lamar Jackson. Heard of him? Yeah, he's not there. So this is not the same situation as it would be if you were in full force. So right. Number one. Number two, if you're going for it, remember, depending on the play that you call, you can tire out defensive ends. You can change the approximation of the defense on the field. So the analytics say in that case that he was actually probably completely right to do that because of the situation and the personnel that was on the field. Now, here's the other thing that we all need to take into account for all of it as well. We don't know, just because somebody's out there, it's not binary that you're 100% good or 100% bad, meaning like you're not 100% healthy or 0% health, or you know what I'm saying? Like it's not binary. So maybe your right guard had been beaten up every single play and he's like 65% if you're assigning an arbitrary percentage to it. So when I look back at that, given the situation and all the different dynamics at play there, I actually think that it was the better opportunity because of the way that the clock would have worked had they gotten it. Remember, we're all smart enough to know that the outcome is not a good measurement of whether or not it was a good decision.
Can you say that again one more time, just to clarify for people?
The outcome does not define whether or not it was a good decision. Trust the process. I can't, like, that to me is, there's a few things, Jack, you're going to learn about me. I absolutely hate certain things. Number one, defense travels in the playoffs. Shut up. So, stop it. Number one. Number two, I just, these football terms drive me bananas. And two, I can't stand, I'm on this strange rant here. I get it. But I cannot stand when these football terms of being like, back in my day, we would have never gone for it there. He should have never done, get off my lawn. Enough of that. End rant. Oh, we may have lost Jack, so I will be right here. So ultimately, look, what I'm going to tell you here is that Jack's Wi-Fi is down, so he'll be back in a second. So let's just chat about a couple of things to do with this week's game. I want to just give some extra alpha here because this is our first show. We're going to have these problems. This is what happens. This is live streaming content, y'all. So one of the things I'm examining for tonight's game, which is our TNF game, a really interesting implications here for both teams. San Francisco travels to Tennessee, obviously, on a short week. Interesting for Tennessee. Who are they going to get back? Is Julio Jones going to be at full speed? Is A.J. Brown going to be at full speed? We're just talking about those binary implications, either all up or all down. But the real problem here for me when it comes to the Titans and why I have the San Francisco 49ers winning this game, but only by 1 point, is because they're missing their tackles. You got no Taylor Lewan. Yeah, that's going to be pretty bad. So I think that means more quick passes for Ryan Tannehill, which means I think he's going to have more than 251.5 passing yards. And I also think that obviously the returning at least better strength wide receivers are going to be good as well in this situation. And then on the other side, interestingly enough, I'm a little concerned about the run game for San Francisco. So if you're relying on Jeff Wilson Jr. to be who takes you to your fantasy kind of championships, because most fantasy teams this week are semifinals, be careful. Zach Cunningham, he is now a Tennessee Titan. He used to be a Houston Texan. He was their leading tackler. They paid him a whole bunch of money just 2 seasons ago with a different regime in Texas. Now some crazy stuff's going on there, and now he is a Titan. And if there's one thing I know about Mike Vrabel, it's those exotic fronts that he learned from his time as a Patriot. They're super effective, especially against what's going on in the run. So 44 defense, it's 4 down linemen, 4 linebackers that will help stop the run. And obviously Kyle Shanahan, well known for his outside zone rushing scheme. Are we back, Jack? Oh, look, we're opposite people now. I'm Jack. Hi. Hello, I'm Jack. It's nice. Oh, perfect. Anyways, so I was just saying that be careful with the Jeff Wilson Jr. I would say more look for the Deebo Samuel to pop in this one. I love targeting slot receivers. The slot has been an area where the Titans have just given up so many yards to opposing receivers. They're one of the worst in the league, 30th or worst. That's, third worst or worse at almost every metric against the slot. So that means fire up all your George Kittle, fire up all your Deebo Samuel, and I like some overs there. We good? Yes, you back? Can you hear me? I can hear you now. You're a little behind, but you're very pixelated, somewhat like a robot. It's very on brand. Okay, I'm going to give you one more point about.
Continue.
What's that? Can you hear me? All right, we're going back to some more TNF talk because I won't get to talk about that when we do the Alpha on Friday. So I think that one of the other things that I'm looking at in this is Jimmy Garoppolo going into the playoffs. So this is an interesting tilt because it almost doesn't matter. So when I look at forward-looking projections, like the Niners is likely to have 3 teams from the NFC West headed to the playoffs. The Niners are kind of third, but kind of not really. I think that they make the playoffs in more than 80% of any sort of projection that I've made. So that's a pretty good number. This one's a little bit more crucial for the Titans in terms of being able to buy them a little bit more opportunity of, getting that home game, which they're very likely to get. The implications here are, to me, it's kind of both teams are going to make the playoffs. So it's not a playoff bound situation, done, not done, because their remaining schedules are such that it's harder for them to miss the playoffs, especially because, the Titans get to play, the teams, the Jags and the Texans. The division is interesting. So it's more interesting. Let's look ahead to Saturday. I like that game, very important game against the Cardinals and the Colts. In fact, that game, or perhaps the game that I'm looking at on Sunday between the Bills and the Patriots, has the biggest implications as far as what's going to happen for the playoffs. So starting with the Cardinals and the Colts, which is obviously, interconference. I don't speak English. I do math. So ultimately that matchup for me with Kyler Murray against the Colts, the interesting note here. So remember, just a level set. Kyler Murray just returning from an ankle injury. He didn't play from like October 24th until 3 weeks ago against the Bears. Looked great against the Bears, not so much after that. So when I look to see what matters in this game, they're adjusting to no DeAndre Hopkins. Well, no DeAndre Hopkins means that their defensive adjustments to stop Jonathan Taylor are even more impactful and magnified, because if they can't get off the field on offense or on defense, it's going to be a very long day, especially without your best, or maybe even the league's best wide receiver, at least top 3. It's very hard to argue anything other than that. So when I look to see what's super important on the other side of the ball, Vance Joseph, who is the defensive coordinator for the Cardinals, he's played a lot of that. I talk about that 44 defense. I'm coming back to it here. They can't stop Jonathan Taylor on that. I think that that's going to be a really big problem, because they're not going to have enough time on offense to score the points that they need. And we've seen them not adjust in games prior. So I like a Michael Pittman situation here. Sounds kind of strange, but it focused on Jonathan Taylor. They're going to need to figure out the Pittman situation. They don't have the corners. They've got great safety in Budda Baker, but they don't have the corners like the Patriots did to shut Pittman down. Can you hear me now, Jack?
I got you.
I just talked to myself for listen, I just talked for a really long time. So I'm going to have to let you do some talking now. I'm going to take a sip of this, coffee and you talk.
Enjoy it. No, I see Jigga says analytics say Jack needs better Wi-Fi. It's accurate. It is accurate. I'm on the road right now. I'm away from my home studio, and the Wi-Fi isn't as reliable as Cynthia. So I appreciate you carrying the squad there for a little. I heard you were talking a little Arizona game. Did you talk Thursday Night Football as well?
I did. I just talked a little bit about, basically, I was looking to say I have a 1-point win tonight in favor of the San Francisco 49ers. I think Vrabel will have some time to adjust. I talked about how Zach Cunningham is now on their team, so it's going to help stop the run, which Kyle Shanahan, obviously that rushing schemes, especially outside zone rushing, is their bread and butter. So stopping that's going to be crucial. But I just don't think with their tackles probably gone missing, Taylor Lewan, Roger Saffold, that it's going to be enough. I think that the defense for the Niners is just a little bit too much for for the Titans to overcome. But I think that Ryan Tannehill is going to have a lot more passing yards because his wide receivers are back. And then I also like the slot receivers on the other side, meaning Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. They're not receivers. George Kittle's not a receiver, but he's a pass catcher, so he might as well be a receiver, right? So I said I like those. There's your recap.
Do I have you?
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, I lost you for a second there.
No,
good. It's episode 1. We're trying to work out
we gotta
kinks.
I'm not worried. I'm not
worried. Trust the process, people. Trust the process. Well, that's great. And that is amazing analysis. I would love for a minute to hear some questions from the chat. If they have any questions about analytics, they have any questions about specific games, while we get those questions into the queue, can you talk to me about my Ravens this weekend? Make or break game, Lamar Jackson's status up in the air. And Cincinnati is a team that I think the numbers have been, I can't say quite disrespectful. They're just the numbers. But some numbers indicate that Cincy isn't quite the team that I think the public thinks they are. What do your numbers say about the Bengals?
Well, as with everything else, things swing too far in either direction. Meaning in the beginning of the season, the Bengals were garbage. I didn't say that. That's, garbage. And then now it's like the Bengals are anointed, right? They're somewhere in between, right? That's what the truth is. I think that in this game, unfortunately, I just think the Ravens are missing too many pieces. Marshawn, I mean, look, you got, why did I say Marshawn there? Listen, Marlon Humphrey with his cat. Marlon Humphrey being gone is a big deal because Joe Burrow, he's actually the best deep passer in the league. 10 deep passing touchdowns. Those are 20-plus air yard plays. He's got 10 touchdowns of those sort, which leads the league. Deep gashes like that blow open entire games. And you see Cincinnati battling back. I honestly think maybe somehow, even though maybe it feels maybe it's just because I have a national view. I think I tend to say I put the Bengals. I actually think the Bengals win the division. I think that the Bengals obviously playoff bound and win the division. But I think that it's going to be mostly because everyone else is some weird stuff happening, and they have managed to. You've actually heard Joe Burrow mention it today. They've managed to stay healthier, maybe because Cincinnati's boring. I can say that because I'm from the Midwest, so it's boring there. So ultimately, I think Joe Burrow though isn't giving himself enough credit because he's a special quarterback. Their O-line is nowhere near as good as he makes it look. Joe Mixon helps out with that, and so does all their deep receivers, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, even Tyler Boyd to some extent, and CJ Uzama. But ultimately, Joe Burrow's really good. And that means I get it. You're a Ravens fan. So you're I don't want another really good quarterback in the division, but that is a nice thing going forward. We want these young guys to be awesome. And Joe Burrow's a gamer. He can find those, he throws his receivers open. He's a really good, he maybe doesn't get talked about maybe as much as he should. I don't know. It depends on where you are.
Yeah, Justin Herbert, the love for Herbert, Joe Burrow.
What are we talking about? Herbert's great, but come on.
Yeah, people, and I think what was interesting, Keenan Allen was a Pro Bowler this year, and I think, is he riding the coattails of Justin Herbert's stardom and, the national purview on the Chargers? But yeah, I am definitely not excited for Sunday. It will be the biggest test for the Ravens this season, and a really good opportunity, honestly, for Cincinnati because they haven't been over the past 2 years. I still don't think their O-line, like you said, is there, but a chance to win the division at home against a division rival is, that's all you can ask for in a young quarterback's career like Burrow. The other big game in the AFC is Buffalo, New England. I am selling a lot of New England stock and buying all the Buffalo stock I can. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think, again, the pendulum swings too far, right? I do think about week, let's call it 10, when the tides shifted to when the Patriots were really going to make the playoffs, it was kind of this Mac Jones. It's mostly because the other rookie quarterbacks have not played well. Whether or not it's their fault, that's another thing for the analytics say, because I would argue that, Trevor Lawrence is really good. And I would argue Zach Wilson is good. We have no idea what's going on in San Francisco. We haven't even seen what's going on there, right? So I don't know, but Mac Jones is a beneficiary of a couple of things. One, an awesome defense, and two, they spent so much money in free agency reinforcing the O-line and the tight ends. You know how much easier it is to throw a quick pass behind a brick wall than it is to throw a quick pass or any sort of pass when a 300-pound man is coming into your face. Like that's a huge difference maker. I'm not saying Mac Jones isn't good, but I'm just saying that I don't know. He's not my pick for offensive rookie of the year. I mean, odds wise, he certainly is, but
right.
He's not like, I think I've seen other guys who I'm like more excited about, like Najee Harris. I know I'm like just coming right at you with these teams, like whatever. But long story short is he'll win it. But I think that it swung too far. I also think the Bills need to figure some stuff out. They've had some weird losses without Tre'Davious White. In this game, they won't get as punished for it as in future games because they don't have that threat of like this crazy take the top off the defense. Like we've seen Jacoby Myers drop a bunch of balls. We've seen Kendrick Bourne when he's playing was good. He had a moment and then he faded. Like they don't have that consistent outside threat that's just going to punish you for not having Tre'Davious White on the field anymore. So as long as Buffalo can figure it out against the run, or if they can start running themselves, not necessarily with Josh Allen scrambling, they're going to be fine. But I think in this game, this is the one they have circled, crossed, checked twice with some stars on it. I think that they're good this week. And I think Dawson Knox sees the end zone.
Okay. What do the analytics say about, referencing a divisional game earlier in the season, and then obviously the game the Bills and Patriots played this year? Do you throw that out because that game is not played under normal conditions with the win? But do you, like the Ravens lose the Bengals, right, in week 6 or 7, whatever it was? Do you use some of that for this upcoming matchup, and then you throw the Bills out? You throw all of it out? What are you looking at?
So the relevant data points, it's the biggest trick to all of this is figuring out the signals from the noise, like what is real and what is not. I will say from that Bills game, the first matchup with the Patriots, the thing I took away was the inability of the Bills defense to adjust. They were literally, it was the same play over and over and over. Maybe they switched which side a tight end was on or which side the back was like, but it was the same play. And I get it, the weather, the whole thing. It was a wonky game. For the most part, you throw out like the averaging stats, right? Like the stats being like, oh, they allow 8x, rush yards per game. No. Just stop doing that. Stay away from like averages, standard deviations. Look at strategy. They didn't shift what was going on with their defense when it wasn't working. That's the signal for me. The rest of it is just noise. And then when you look at these divisional matchups, they're always going to be closer. They're always going to be more tightly contested because each team has so much scheme familiarity with each other. Teams don't turn over super dramatically in a year. The 53-man roster stays pretty well set. Maybe you have a different skill guy here, different whatever. But for the most part, you have so much familiarity. And by the way, the people who are architecting it, they often stay similar. If they're good, they stay pretty like the same as well. And by the way, the good ones are the harder ones to beat, not the ones that keep turning over, math. That's just logic. So at the end of the day, it's really about figuring out like tendencies and schemes. And that's why you see that's why last week we go back to what we started with here, but the Chargers made calls that people thought were nonsensical against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I think part of that, like people talk about, they went into halftime and because of play calling, they were down 2 points. I'm like, or you can think that they saved 4 because they would have given the Chiefs an extra possession. Maybe they would have scored, etc. So you can't look at things in this vacuum. If that's who they've decided to be, and it had been working for them for the bulk of the season, and they've been practicing that, that's not even what the analytics say. That's what their decision said, right? It's not. That's their strategy. So those things are, especially in division matchups, those things come into play big time there.
For sure. Okay, we will answer one question, even though it's probably going to ruin your mood on this beautiful Thursday. From Shara, she says, what place within the NFC East does Cynthia think the Eagles will end up in? I also have some Eagles friends, so we're going to
start a support group.
Yeah, our distaste
is
towards
your best
them.
friend. Is your best friend an Eagles fan? Join up here. We get it. We will provide you an extra hour of therapy every day because you're going to need it. Look, I think that the Eagles and Saints are going to be vying for a playoff spot. So that means second in the division is where they're most likely to end up. Now, they only play division games left, and it actually does flow really well because we just talked about these division matchups can be weird. Like the Cowboys could lose one to the Giants, even though the Giants are clearly the worst in that division, right? Like that just could happen. And then Washington, who knows what team they'll be fielding? Do you know? Because I will inception that into my brain if so. But like ultimately, it's more about figuring out like I think what's going to happen is that week 18. It's between the Cowboys and the Eagles. And what's going to happen is whoever wins that game, if the Cowboys, by the way, they're all but lock and loaded at 99.7% that they make the playoffs in all of my models. So they're in. But if the Cowboys win that game, then the Saints go. If the Cowboys lose that game, then the Eagles go. That's what's most likely to happen. So that means that NFC East, they end up in spot number 2, Shara.
Okay.
Support group started.
Yeah, support group started. Hopefully the support we'll have for them is not being in the playoffs. I think we're both rooting very, very hard against that sake. But this is amazing. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. I assume everyone knows where to find you, Cynthia. But if you want to give them a fair reminder, take your chance.
You got it. Twitter, C Frelund. Instagram, my whole name, Cynthia Frelund. And I will say the NFL Network does a really nice job putting together. Like I tell them all my numbers and they do a really nice job of like these beautiful highlight videos with like, it's called Nat Sound. We're like touchdown Chargers. It's great. So if you wanted some fun highlights, but with numbers, like I will say that's what my Twitter's pretty much good for.
All nerds, head over to the Twitter of Cynthia. We appreciate you all checking in. A Merry Christmas to everyone. A Happy Holidays.
Jack, and I like your guys like spitting some like massive light there.
Yeah, I love it. It's just breathing hot blue fire. We love that.
Because why wouldn't you? What's better than that?
Absolutely nothing. Well, this was the Analytics Say from the Knights of DGen. We will see you all soon.